Happy New Year to everybody. I hope your holidays were good and quiet and uneventful. And now we're ready to be back and presenting lunch and listen once again. Just let me just say that yesterday I was down at the Shell. It's looking spectacular, more and more complete. And this is the last opportunity, really, in the next week to see all of the technology that's embedded in that inside the inner liner, because the inner liner, inside the outer liner, the inner liner will start to go into the shell next week. It's that smooth surface with openings for the technology to drop down, but it is going to be now kind of completed with that finished look. That'll take probably about 4 weeks. You'll probably see some images on our website of people that look like they're rappelling down a mountainside instead, as they kind of stretch that inner liner 1 inch an hour to complete the stage area. But we were testing our sound system this week, which is really wonderfully balanced and powerful. And we'll continue to tweak that once the inner liner is in. And so it's very exciting. The concrete is all poured. A lot of the landscaping is in, beautiful trees and plantings, and it looks great.
Happy New Year. I'm so sorry
Happy
what
New
happened.
Year.
I have no idea what happened. I was out, and I guess when I come back, everything was gone.
That's
I'm so
okay,
sorry.
because you and I were having a nice conversation before, and one of the things you said at that point, which is so true, is we don't often get a chance to just sit down and talk. Backstage, it's a busy beehive before and after rehearsals and concerts, and we pass in the hallway. So it's nice to have half an hour today to get to know each other and
Right.
answer some questions from our guests. So that was a beautiful piece, the Vieuxtemps. Tell us just a little bit about maybe why you chose that and a little bit about the piece.
Okay. Well, Vieuxtemps, so many people know, is a very famous violinist at the time, and he composed a lot of music for violins. But for viola, he composed, I think, a total of 4 pieces, and this is one of them. A very, very beautiful, small melancholy music. But the reason I pick it, I mean, it's nice and short, and it's very accessible. And a lot of people play this actually recently. And I feel that, I know this piece when I was, I think, first approach, I think it was 12, when I was 12. So it's about like 30 years ago. So when I try to get everything come back, that's why I feel that all the master works, you play the same piece, but in different time, it feels so differently every time. And I see right now we have this internet that's so clever, and we can get to hear all kinds of performance online. And I listen to different renderings of this piece, and so often that I really wanted to see. I want to come back to this piece and then try to see if I can bring it out myself. Yeah, as I think I told you before, every performance to me is just a unique experience, and you never know what's going to happen next. So when I play this, I feel, this is the moment, and I really enjoy playing it. And who knows what's going to happen after I play this. Maybe 10 years after I'm going to play this again, it will feel completely different. So that's why I did it. And it was definitely a very rewarding experience to me when I, doing the recording process. So.
Well, I think that's an interesting observation. Do you have recordings of yourself at different stages of your life? Do you ever go back and listen to those?
I try not to listen to it too often. Yeah, it's just because a lot of times, um, I try to convince myself going only look forward. A lot of times when we go back, you feel like, oh, I did so wonderfully 10 years ago. How can I repeat to do that? But soon I realized repeating yourself is not actually the way to help you to progress, to make to the different stage, to the next stop of your life. So yeah, once in a while, if I feel really bored or someone pushes me, I will show them the recording of it. But I try to continue to look forward to what's happening, you know, different stage of life.
I think that's a good it's a good mantra for all of us to have in our lives. I mean, we learn from the past, but it's a forward looking. And
Right.
um, so you started on the violin in Taiwan. Tell us a little bit about what music education was like for you.
Well, I grew up in a musical family. My dad is he's a Chinese music professor, and he composes, he conducts Chinese orchestras. He does a lot of performing as well. And my mom is a pianist. So I believe my mom was my dad's student. I don't know, I'm not sure. But anyways, so I grew up in a musical family, and I started with piano. A lot of my friends and colleagues do that in Taiwan, and I started to play violin when I was 6, and I switched to viola when I was 11 because my old violin teacher actually he immigrated to Canada.
Hmm.
So I got a new teacher, and then Ben Lin, he's one of the very influential teacher of my life, very first teacher, and so I changed to viola. Um, and after that, I stopped playing for 3 years.
Oh,
Um, and I got, in this all these teenager moments, you don't know what to do, and you try to explore what you want to do after. And then and the end, like when I was 14 or 15, I can't remember, I started to realize that, that's something I really wanted to go back to get hold of. So I started to play again, and I never stopped ever since. Um, yeah, I went to, I mean, for a lot of Taiwanese people, we actually, uh, when I went to military, I was military for 2 years. So I did trombone when I was in military.
Wow.
um, of course, as well as playing viola at the time. So I play all kinds of music. When I was in Taiwan, I actually worked for, um, I play in the orchestras and I play in restaurants. I
Hmm.
play all kinds of music. So, I have a really big appetite on all kinds of music. So it's a really, really incredible experience for me just to, it's very beneficial to my listening palates. So, and then, I come to States after I finished my military service and I was in the East Coast for, I think, 7 years. And I got a San Diego job right after I graduated from DMA. So
That's a great story. I love the fact that you were playing multiple instruments and multiple genres. And the perfect preparation for San Diego, where we play a lot of different kinds of music. But um, I, it's been a pleasure hearing you now all these years. The one piece that we talked a little bit about earlier today was the Strauss, the Don Quixote, where the viola plays as in a solo role, and there's a story. And how do you? I mean, it's one of the great pieces written for the viola, in my opinion. There are some other ones that I know you also love, like Walton, which we can talk about as well. But um, how, when you approach that piece, talk to me a little bit about what that means for the viola, that role, as it were, as well as that solo.
Yeah, I think, for violas, we don't get too many opportunities to play a solo instrument. Um, and one of this, the Don Quixote to me, I played that. It was the second time I played it, and the first time I played with Johannes Moser as a solo cello, and it just feels the preparation of it. It's very important. You have to sort of get to know the history of what the story plot is, and then try to see if you can follow the line of what Sancho Panza has been doing, what kind of character we try to capitalize. Um, and it is actually a fun process to get to know a character, get to portray a character in playing. It's just not, a lot of times people feel like, playing instrument is you just play the melodies and play the notes, but there's a lot of things that's behind what's written on the music that really takes imagination of doing it. Um, when you look at articles and when you look at plots from different um, composers, different authors, you have this picture in your head and you have these motions and you have these movements in your head. You want to portray that. That's exactly how I felt when I tried to give my own edition of what the Sancho Panza has been doing. And I just feel it's very, very challenging and very fun to go through the process and to learn. Each time I feel differently. And this time when I play was obviously wonderful, Lisa Wasserstein and our music director. It's definitely a very, it's like an eye-opening experience to me. So it's great both times, especially the most recent ones. So I can't wait to play actually the next time.
Well, it's a beautiful piece, and you played it really beautifully. One of the questions from one of our audience members was also a question I was going to ask you. So you start on violin and you switch to the viola. What technical differences are there between viola and violin?
Um, I would say that, I mean, a lot of people probably wouldn't agree, but viola is actually harder to play well. I started on violin, and a lot of people saying, "Oh, you can make it to violin, so you switch to viola." So somehow it's true. There are less competitors, when you grow up. But nowadays, it's everything is so competitive. Um, but for me, um, playing viola technically, because the instrument is larger, and you really have to try to, it's like imagine you're holding a cello here. But violin it's much better mobile. You can move around very easily. But for viola, it takes a little bit more effort to move around. And obviously the range is a little bit different. So you have to learn all kinds of technique to be able to produce a much more deeper sound by using different kind of technique to feel the gravity when you play it. For violin, sometimes it's the pronunciation of the instrument is so easy. You just put a bow on the string and you just let go, and the sound will come out beautifully. But for viola, sometimes we have to really try to dig in and try to get that feel of pulling out the sound from the instrument. So that's the main difference to me. Yeah, it's just technically it's more challenging to play well on the viola.
So there are many wonderful solos for viola in the orchestral repertoire. Well, we also have a question about concertos and chamber music, but let's think about orchestral repertoire. What, how would you say composers have used the viola either as a solo part in a symphonic setting or the section? What are they looking for in terms of the contrasting sound?
That's a really interesting question. I've thought about this. The importance, I mean, there are so many composers play viola. Believe it or not, Beethoven played viola, Bach played viola. We have so many great musicians play viola, so many great composers. They used viola, I think, for the limited of repertoire I played, um, in a very poignant way that portrays something that the voice is closest to the heart. Um, Either emotionally you are disturbed, or you are um, under, a lot of times it's more like within. It's just it portrays the character. um, I mean, that's part of the reason I started on viola. I feel like I was a very shy person, and viola is my only voice I can actually speak to people comfortably. So that's how I feel that most of the composers I noticed that it's purely it's a outpouring um, sound from the heart. That's how I think that most of composers use to um, to use the instrument.
That's very interesting. That it's sort of a soulful internal um, sound that they're looking for. It can also be, I mean, there's a darkness to it, not like the cello, but a darkness, kind of a foreboding. I mean, I'm thinking of Russian composers and Prokofiev and Shostakovich.
Right. Yes. Um, and often, as you mentioned, Shostakovich, his last work he actually composed for viola. So a lot of composers decided to use viola in their later stage. They realized that, oh, there's something that we want to actually is able to bring out from the deepest mind, that a viola is a perfect voice for it. So yeah, more and more composers I can think of, if during their later lives, they try to use viola as their voice. So yeah, it's incredible to see. I mean, incredible experience for us. Actually, a very privilege. Yeah.
You have done in your lifetime, you've played all over the world, as you have said, and uh, also a lot in chamber music. What contrast for us your chamber music life and your orchestral life?
I think a good musician requires very good listening skills. Chamber music is a smaller listening part, and it really, I grew up with I was very fortunate to have a teacher who actually has a string orchestra that I play with. There was no conductor at the time when I was 11 when I changed to switch to viola. So I started with that orchestra, and I just found that uh, the more you listen to people, the better you play. Um, and I feel incredible to do that in chamber music, and then it's even better when you play in an orchestra. Once you learn how to listen in a smaller groups, and once you start to listen to in big groups, you start to open your eyes and listening to people, you start to grow even more. So I just always feel like playing in front of or among people feels a learning experience to me. And then, I always I tell my colleagues that, it's great. I'm actually paid to learn the whole life. It's just amazing that I have this opportunity to do it. And I'm still consistent with listening and learning, and I pass along to my students, and it's just great. Yeah.
Well, I always say that an orchestra is really more like a laboratory, an extension of that learning that you did in the conservatory or in the, in your graduate programs. And it isn't, some people think of it as an entertainment ensemble, but it's really about making sure the orchestra has the best players and is led by the best musicians with guest soloists and conductors and so forth. So you are always learning together. I think that you and I are on the same wavelength on that.
That's great. Yeah, the reason I mentioned that is because, I started in this orchestra, I was the section player. I over the time I learned, I started in the last chair, and now I'm in the first chair. So I through all this process, and each of the role I play, I try to learn as much as I can. Um, at this moment right now, I feel like I know most of the roles, especially within my section. So I know what my section people would need me at particular moments. So I think that's what makes this job for me is actually a dream come true. I'm able to provide my experience as a section player, as a leader, as a chamber musician, and pass along that to the next generation of musicians. I just feel that I'm very privileged to do it, and I feel like I'm obligated to do it too.
So how do you see your role as a principal? What's different about a principal of a section compared to a section player?
I think to me, it's the vision that you wanted to have, and um, to particular piece of music, and the communication skill that you have. Not only that you need to convince your colleagues, but you need to make sure that everyone's on the same boat. Luckily, I have a really, really cohesive section that everyone's very responsive, um, and very people are pouring with great suggestions and musical ideas during all rehearsals. It's just an incredible experience to have so many colleagues that can be your teachers at times. You're learning from them, and you try to communicate and then bring this job into, bring it up to the next level. That's really be at heart of music making. I think that's very, very important. Yeah. So that's how I feel as a principal. And I feel it's incredible responsibility, but incredible fun.
Well, that's inspiring. One last question from our audience. What works are you working on now? What pieces are you working on now? And what are solo pieces you would love to play with orchestra?
There are so many things I wanted to play actually, but I came here to the States, and the first concerto I played was Walton. I played Walton when I was in first year when I came here, and I won the concerto competition in NEC. The first ever actually, violist won the concerto competition. They were so surprised. It's like, who? Violist won the concerto competition. So yeah, and then that was the first piece, the first concerto I played in the States. I always want to come back. As I mentioned, I love to go back to great pieces in different stages of life. It just feels so differently. And I also wanted to play Shinika as one of my dream pieces to play. As you mentioned, I have a really big appetite on things I would like to do. So those are the pieces I think is technically challenging, but emotionally, I feel that I wanted to go back to the root of it. So
those are great suggestions. I appreciate that. Tell us, I think you've recorded one other work for us to hear this afternoon. Would you like to introduce that?
yes. I recorded Andante Sostenuto by Max Reger. He's a composer that he does not play viola. I know he plays piano. I know he does keyboard. I just wanted to, the reason I picked this movement is because I just want to reflect the situation we're currently having right now. Andante, sostenuto. It feels like we're walking, but we're actually having this resistance in front of us, and we try to break through. That the motivation is always there, and we try to use that. And once it's like walking in a swimming pool. Once you're walking out of the swimming pool, you feel like you're free. So something I'm looking forward to after this is over. And hopefully this will be the same experience for a lot of people.
It's great. We look forward to hearing it now. And Happy New Year. So good to see you and have this time together.
Yes, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you so much for having me.